Right.
Hey,
G'day, guys.
what's going on?
How we going? How's
Good.
your day been?
I guess for today we're going to talk about heat, aren't we? Saunas
Yep.
and all their
Yeah.
amazing benefits, detox and recovery and
Well, we talked about cold therapy a couple of weeks ago, didn't we? So, yeah, flip it on its head and go the other way.
It's hard not to talk about hot and cold together, isn't it? Yeah.
Mm.
I think there'll be some crossover in some of the discussions we have today.
for sure.
Probably got some studies.
Well, you do both, don't you, mate? Your cold water immersion and also sauna. You did some sauna this morning?
Did some sauna this morning. It was a lovely experience. They've got a new little sauna where I go, and it looks out behind the leisure centre. You look out over the bushland that's there, and it was 110 degrees in there, looking out over the bush.
Nice.
Rain's teeming down. I know it's about 10 degrees outside, and I'm rugged up in the sauna, sweating it out. It was awesome.
And
It's
that's
a good
110 Celsius, isn't it?
Celsius,
So that's
yeah.
proper hot.
Well, I did think that maybe the
Trying to do some sums here, what that is in Fahrenheit.
215 to 20 maybe.
That's hot. That's real hot.
I didn't. I thought maybe the thermometer was broken because it's usually about 90 degrees in there.
Having a look at a
quite
few of the
nice.
studies that I was looking at over this topic, and a lot of them say that the best benefits come from 80 to 120.
Yeah,
Degrees
I've read the
Celsius.
same thing.
Celsius,
Yeah,
Well, looking at that, that's 230 degrees Fahrenheit.
230.
That's
right.
hot.
Oh boy.
Damn.
Well, that's why I thought maybe it was broken.
No, I mean maybe not. I think people definitely do them that hot, don't
Yeah,
they? Like
yeah.
obviously that was within that range you were just talking about. But
Sweating my perineum off, that's for sure.
yeah. So what sort of sauna was that, CJ? Was that
That's a dry sauna.
dry sauna?
Yeah.
Yep.
Probably your typical Swedish type
Yes.
sauna. It's got the hot rocks.
Yep.
Back in the day, you'd put some water on there and it'd steam up.
Then it'd
They
become
don't do that
a
anymore.
Wet sauna, wouldn't it? If
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's got the rocks. I think it might be just for show because it's electric. So you pour water on that and you get a zap.
So mate, how long did you manage to last? That's pretty hot.
I did about 40 minutes.
Wow.
But I kind of chop in and out. I jump out for a minute or two.
Yep.
Go grab a bit of water. Douse myself in some cold water for about a minute.
Yep.
Just from the shower. It allows me to stay in there for a little bit longer. Wash off some of the sweat. It's interesting. Sometimes you speak to some of the old boys in there. Sauna's going, there's 4 or 5 people in there, which is fairly gross in itself.
They're old duck bags.
Yeah.
Below their
Old
towel.
dudes with white towels around their
Yeah.
waists. Maybe not. Yeah.
I was in there on my own today, which was great. But so you talk to them and they say you've got to stay in there till your sweat turns clear. You get these myths from the old boys in there. If your sweat's opaque or hazy.
I've never had opaque sweat. I don't
No.
know. Is that a
He
thing?
said, "Well, this is what the thing that they were saying. That's the detox. Once your sweat is now clear, you've detoxed, so you can hop out."
Opaque sweat?
Really?
I didn't even know that was a thing.
No, neither did I. And that's what I kind of. Well, that's some real detox you need to be doing.
Man, if you've got opaque sweat, you need more than a fucking sauna.
I look. I didn't believe them. But,
Maybe did they also tell you, mate, just be careful when you walk out of the sauna and you walk out in the wind pulling your face, that the wind will change your face.
All these myths.
Right?
Yeah.
Jeez.
That wasn't one of them. But Mum told me that back in the day. You don't want to pull a face because the wind will change.
Wind will change.
Yeah.
Just on that, I actually do a bit of heat bathing. We don't have a sauna at home. I have done a little bit of infrared saunaing in the past when I stayed at a property we were renting that had one there. But I know the Japanese do a lot of heat bathing. I'm sure CJ's got a study up his sleeve, but
2018.
So I do similar. I get in a bath as absolutely hot as I can tolerate to the point where it's basically burning my skin. Sit in there for a few minutes and sort of acclimatise, and then try and add even a little bit more hot water, and you pretty quickly get a good sweat on. I sit in it up to my neck, and I try and stay there for sort of half an hour or 45 minutes, and I really rate it. You do really sweat, and you don't notice how much you're sweating until you get out of the bath, and you're just really profusely sweating like you have got out of a sort of like a dry sauna. But I guess it's a little bit of a poor man's way to do a sauna, or to get exposure to that heat, at least, if you don't have access.
I guess that's the thing, is a lot of the things I looked at, all the studies that I looked at, they use sauna because it's easy and available,
Mm.
and the data you can kind of get straight away. You know, you can poke and prod and do these things. But I guess for the common man, you do what you can with what you've got. No, not a lot of people are going to have a sauna in their backyard. It's actually quite costly to go to the sauna at your rec center or your leisure center. So using a bath is great, but they're probably similar, right? You're doing the same thing.
Yeah.
You're heating your shell up and your core. It would be similar mechanisms.
Yeah, so from a biochemical point of view, as long as you get it hot enough, you're still going to stimulate heat shock proteins, which is basically the pathway that you're switching on when you go into a hot sauna.
Yeah.
So, well, that's one of the components. So another component is obviously the immense sweating that you do, which is good for detox and things like that. But
Yeah.
in terms of when you look at the biochemistry, as long as you get up to a hot enough temperature for long enough, then you're going to stimulate these heat shock proteins they talk about. So I guess whether you're in a bath or you're in a dry sauna or a wet sauna or whatever, as long as you're getting that temperature, you're probably going to get that similar sort of like biochemical. Yeah, I don't
That's
know.
what I say, and I couldn't find the studies to say that there just doesn't look like there's been studies on being in the bath as opposed to in the sauna. But I would assume that the mechanisms are the same, right?
I think the only thing that would be very different is the fact that when you're inside a sauna, you're breathing the superheated air. So your body absolutely would cool that down. And if you're in a sauna CJ and it was up to 110 C, then you're definitely not breathing 110 C air into your lungs because you would do damage. But when it goes through your mouth and your nasopharynx, it would be quite warm, and then it would cool down a fair bit before you actually inhaled it. But I think there is some benefit of having that in your mouth and your nasopharynx.
Yeah, that makes sense
as well.
I couldn't breathe through my nose today.
You can breathe through your nose.
Well, I can. But it stings. It was burned the nostril.
Yeah, so I think there is some benefit to that I've come across when you look at some of the studies. But
I just couldn't do it. It just hurt too much.
I guess, no matter what heat environment you're in, you're still achieving, like you said before, Smitty, the same effect of opening up capillaries, getting blood moving, getting that lymphatic system moving as well. And
stroke volume increase. Your heart pumps more.
Yeah. Yep. But like you said, Smitty, I found it really interesting just listening to Andrew Huberman. He was saying that extreme heat increases the release of dynorphin.
Yep.
Which is when that's released, you become agitated. It's an agitated, like an anxious sort of feeling that when that's released. And sometimes I have felt that in a sauna, like I just feel, I've got to get out of here. I just feel sort of not comfortable.
Yeah.
But that release of that dynorphin, your body wants that to bind to kappa opioid receptors, which was a term I hadn't heard before. But when that happens, the body releases those heat shock proteins that you just mentioned. And those heat shock proteins assist with cellular repair of damaged proteins, and also make endorphin bind itself to its own receptors. Therefore, then creating that good feeling, that positive
endorphin release.
Endorphin release.
Yeah,
serotonin, it was sort of like a similar sort of effect that we talked about with the cold therapy. That release of a particular hormone that has a positive effect physiologically and psychologically on the brain. I found it so interesting, huh?
Yeah, maybe we can talk about those heat shock proteins because there are benefits of metabolism, immuno building, long-term stuff, brain function, heart health, hormone production. The heat shock proteins you sort of discussed there, we can touch on those, I guess. They're a bit of like a protective mechanism. I guess if you were cooking meat, you've got your raw meat. Sounds a bit gross, right? You've got your raw meat and your cooked meat. The proteins are different. Yeah. Those heat shock proteins are that protective mechanism to stop that happening to our meat, I guess.
Yeah, right.
So, it stops the folding. Smithy, you might know a bit more about it. Shed some more light.
Yeah, so your heat shock proteins, they refer to them as like a little bit of a molecular chaperone. So basically, the heat shock proteins are always in our body, but when we're exposed to a temperature extreme, then they increase quite a bit. So that they might be down at a very low level, like 1% or something like that, and then they can increase dramatically after an exposure to heat. But essentially, they do a lot of different functions, but their most important function is the sort of chaperoning of your proteins to make sure that they fold in the correct manner. Because when our body is making all these intricate structures within itself, intracellular structures and things like that, there's a lot of misfolding that goes on when amino acids are folded in the wrong way. So these heat shock proteins are seen as like a little bit of a chaperone where they make sure that the proteins are folded in the correct way. So they're almost like a protective little molecule that makes sure that the body is doing what it needs to do. And
they're going and rescuing the proteins that are affected by heat and then stopping them from misfolding or not doing what they should do.
Yeah, so the numbers increase a lot after the heat, and then they go and do all their good work.
Yep.
So it's one of those proteins, one that I was reading about, BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor.
No, but brain-derived neurotrophic factor does increase in the presence of heat.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, so brain-derived neurotrophic factor basically makes or
smart drugs
encourages, but it encourages stem cells in your brain to actually become neurons.
Right. Okay.
So it's almost like it helps you grow new brain.
Yep, and it helps regulate like your synapse plasticity. So that synaptic gap there, so things are happening
because
more
you can actually your nerves or your neurons can grow in the presence of brain-derived neurotrophic factor. So when you're young and when you're a little kid, you probably have higher brain-derived neurotrophic factor. Your brain's growing.
Yeah.
And then anything you can do to stimulate more of it in adulthood will essentially help your brain to be more plastic. Have more of that neuroplasticity, so because you can grow new neurons and make new connections and things like that. Yeah,
so we're leading down to like some cognitive benefits as well for heat therapy. So stuff like that'd obviously be like directly affected with depression or states of mood and stuff like that. That could have effects on.
Yeah, supposedly. And I'm going to crank out a quick study here.
Oh, you got the first study
for a study, if you don't mind, because it just links in nicely with what you were saying when we were talking about the brain. So Finland, apparently they're crazy for their saunas. Almost every house in Finland supposedly has a sauna. It's a big part of their culture. And so the Finnish do a lot of saunaing. And they've done some really good studies to look at the positive benefits of it. And one of them was they followed a group of 2,300 people over 20 years. So pretty long observational study and a decent sample size, like 2,300 men. They took into account other variables like someone's exercise status and their socioeconomic status and things like that. And after they evened it all out, they worked out the guys who used a sauna 4 to 7 times a week compared to men that only used it 1 time a week for 15 minutes had a 66% lower risk of dementia and a 65% lower risk of Alzheimer's disease. So obviously two sort of neurodegenerative diseases.
Yep. Mate, I did see that study. It was an interesting one. Yeah.
So they took
an amazing figure.
It is.
So they took out the healthy user bias. Did they?
Yes.
Of the people in
exactly. So when they normalised everyone for other things like socioeconomic and exercise and things like that, and they removed that bias, so everyone was on an even playing field, they found that after that, over and above it, if you were using it 4 to 7 times a week for 15 minutes as opposed to once, you got those nearly 2/3 reduction in dementia and Alzheimer's.
So they looked at people who kind of smoking, drinking, exercising, that kind of thing, levelled it out.
Exactly. They took away the confounding variables.
Yeah.
So that's
we both, do you know what? We might have all found that same. I think I might have found that study.
I think it's a very.
What was it? What was it called again? Sorry, because mine's was from 2018. Mine, but it might have been a bit different.
Yeah, sometimes they update them or
or someone recreates them.
I did read the study last night, and then I made a couple little notes just about the results. So I'm going to be like the worst guy in the world and not credit the academics who did it. But the data is interesting.
Sauna bathing is associated with decreased cardiovascular mortality and improves risk production in male and female.
Yeah.
Does that sound about right? I don't know.
Sounds about right.
Similar.
Hey, that leads me to a good thing that I also picked up from Andrew Huberman, right? So you talked about heart health.
Yes.
So he was talking about 2 modalities of sauna treatment. And so basically a lot of sauna treatment throughout the week is not good for your growth hormone production. So if you're sort of like in muscle building or whatever, like muscle building development, probably not good to do more than maybe 2 or 3 times a week of sauna. So his first modality, right? So for to not have a negative effect on growth hormone, he said that roughly 2 hours once a week was enough for sauna treatment. But that 2 hours was in a sort of a protocol of a 30-minute sauna, as hot as you can tolerate. Come out for about 5 to 10 minutes with no cold exposure, so just coming out of that hot environment. Re-immerse yourself for 30-minute sauna, back out again for 5 to 10, and repeat that for 2 hours. And that was the day that all you needed to do for your sauna treatment to not have a negative effect on growth hormone. But the other protocol was 2 to 4 times a week being the best for long-term heart health. 2 to 4 times a week of 30 minutes a day. And so what you were just highlighting there, Jonesy, that mortality of people with from heart conditions. He also mentioned this, that there was a 27% reduction in heart event mortality with 30 minutes sauna 2 to 3 times a week. But there was a 50% reduction in heart event mortality in 30 minutes of sauna 4 times a week. So I guess what we're just highlighting here is that there are long-term benefits if you do more sauna treatments throughout the week. But there are that could have negative impositions on your growth hormone production.
Yes.
Whereas the once a week was more advantageous for those concerned with growth hormone.
Roo, do you know if that took into account the type of sauna? Because I've heard that, well, I haven't heard, I think maybe it varies depending on if it's an infrared sauna versus a wet or a dry sauna, because I think the infrared ones don't get as higher heat, in atmosphere,
Yeah.
and I think maybe they don't have the same negative effect on growth hormone. Is that a thing, or
from what I gathered from that discussion, they were referring to sauna that wasn't infrared.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was your traditional type sauna.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting. I'll have to check up on that a little bit, but yeah, because I think the infrared ones offer some other advantages.
Definitely. Well, if you look at the mechanisms by which things happen when you're in the sauna, vasodilation increases, stroke volume increases, heart rate increases, probably between sort of 100 and 150 beats per minute. What does that look like? That looks like zone 2 cardio exercise, and low level, easy, out in a jog kind of, low level fitness.
It's basically a
Definitely
exercise mimic, isn't it? It's sort of tricking your body into thinking you're almost doing exercise.
Yeah. So we've probably touched on some benefits there. We've briefly sort of discussed sort of some of the stuff we each do, but in your research for our podcast today, what kinds of things did you find? So while I was looking, I found sort of a temperature range. You want to look for about sort of 80 to 100 degrees Celsius, and obviously that how hot that's going to be depends on you. Like Mickey was just talking about there, the tolerance, you're going to build up some tolerance. So at the start, you might only be able to handle sort of 80 degrees for 5 minutes or so. The rate at which you sweat is going to be different. So I guess that temperature range, from what I've looked at and personally experienced, between sort of 80 and 100, and between sort of 5 and 20 minutes, I reckon, is a pretty good little protocol. I know you're kind of talking about doing 30 minutes there, but especially like today, it was 110. Staying in for much longer than 20 minutes was definitely hard work for me. You get, like you said, you get agitated. You're kind of like, I've got to get out of here. I think that's your body telling you, as the ancestral man would have done, listened to their body and probably got out of that difficult environment. So you jump out a couple of minutes, like Huberman was saying, jump back in. I did think, it would be great to be able to get to the sauna, because from what I've sort of read, 2 to 3 times a week is ideal. You were talking about that, Rooster, before.
I guess ideal for certain health benefits.
Yeah.
More so the heart, cardiovascular sort of.
Yeah. So, I mean, does maybe one sauna, a couple of hot showers, or a bath, is that going to be as beneficial? I don't know. But yeah, I guess whatever you can get to.
Yeah, well, there was a study that showed that elevating core body temp to 38.5 degrees Celsius led to an acute antidepressant effect that lasted up to 4 to 6 weeks. And this study went for about 6 weeks. And that was done in 2015, that study.
Yeah.
So just indicating that that temperature there, 38.5, was enough to help improve mood, decrease stress.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, well, it seems like I think in future episodes, maybe the next episode, we're going to talk about testosterone. So, I mean, cortisol and testosterone are kind of antagonist hormones, aren't they? So if you're reducing cortisol, you're going to increase your testosterone, and maybe that's that's another benefit. And I've got to study, but I want to save it for our testosterone one, so I'll bring it up next time.
Right.
I'm going to link all three, right?
Okay.
The cold, hot testosterone.
Oh, that sounds exciting.
Look forward to that on the next episode.
I'm looking forward to it.
Is it Japanese?
It's not.
Oh. It'd have to be
Might
Finnish.
be Finnish.
Yeah.
CJ, when you get into that super hot sauna, how long does it take you to start sweating? Is it almost instantaneous that you feel your body starting to sweat, or you got a 5 or 10 minute?
No, I'm not a good sweater. Well, I don't know. Maybe I'm efficient, or my metabolism is high. I don't know what it is, but I sweat a lot less than people that I look at exercising doing the same thing as me. So it took about sort of 8 to 10 minutes, I think.
Yeah, okay.
It was almost at the end of my first go outside and grab a drink period, because obviously when you're in there, you want to hydrate a lot. You're sweating a lot. I found the benefit of the benefit of sweating came towards the end. So that last sort of 10 minutes, I was dripping.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if sweating is one of the benefits you want to get from it, and maybe people sweat at different rates, and that's makes it easier to tolerate or whatnot. But yeah, for me, it takes about 8 to 10 minutes before. I mean, I get a little bead on, a few beads, but when it's dripping off you and you've got to flick it. Oh man, when there's other people in there and the old fellas are like rubbing their faces and it's going.
Oh,
I'm like, get me out of here.
Because I mean,
you know what I'm like with the germs.
Yeah, you don't love them, do you?
Having said that, one of the things I did read in the studies is the germs. Because that's what I was concerned about, there's germs everywhere. There's a dude that's just sat here before me and put sweat all over these chairs, I did look at it and the germs can't handle it.
No, they're not enjoying themselves in there.
No. So that made me feel very good.
Yeah.
I mean, you think about the human body, we do a high fever, we go up to 40, maybe 41 C, and we're sort of really killing off our
viruses,
pathogens. I mean, 110 C, I don't think those suckers are lasting.
It made me feel good.
Yeah. Probably a good zone for you as a germaphobe. Probably actually very...
What's the other thing where the sound of things, like people chewing and...
Oh yeah, that is a condition. Isn't it?
Because when the guy's like
that.
He's doing that. I'm like, oh man, and people chewing, that's no good either.
I've got a mate who can't even handle someone eating a carrot.
Oh.
Like crunching on a carrot, he just wigs out.
Flips out.
Yeah. And then if you got someone like smacking their lips when they eat.
Yeah. No, I can't handle that either. My kids do it, and I look at them, I stare them down. They're like, sorry.
Stare them down.
Sorry, I'm getting us off track there. So yeah, we looked at those kind of temperature ranges and those. I guess you were talking about at Rooster before. Different times to be in there have different benefits for different things, and any other ones that you found of those different temperature ranges or time frames, or I guess the infrared is a bit different.
For me, not the most interesting thing, but one of the really compelling things is the detox aspect of the profuse sweating.
Yeah.
So, I mean, in our modern life, we're all really overburdened with heavy metals. A lot of people, if you go and test, most of us are going to have some sort of heavy metal overburden. One of the best ways to get rid of it is through sweat. So certain heavy metals, particularly your mercury, your cadmium, arsenic, and I think it's lead, are really good at getting excreted through sweat. So, I mean, if you go into a sauna regularly and you're regularly sweating, you're going to be pushing out some of those heavy metals. So, super good for you from a detox point of view. But the only sort of caveat is that when you get out, you've got to wash yourself off really well. You can't be letting the sweat dry back on you, because your body will reabsorb what you've put out. So,
well, that makes sense, doesn't it?
Yeah, a lot of people in the wellness space talk about getting like some Castile soap or something like that, and give yourself a really good wash as soon as you get out, and making sure that all those sort of toxins and heavy metals go down the drain rather than just reabsorbing back into your skin. But
get out your fluffy exfoliator.
Wow.
Exactly. I don't know what that is, but
Hey, dry skin body brushing.
talk
Yeah.
about a loofah or something like that.
What's that?
I don't know, one of those fluffy things. Is that what you're talking about?
The fluffy, wiry sort of things. Takes off a layer of skin.
That pink thing that you have at work that you carry out.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, detox. Like, what a good way to detox.
Yeah.
Same as exercise, I guess, or getting out in the sun and sweating or anything like that. It's obviously the natural way to do it. But if you're doing it on a regular basis and you're getting out a little bit every time, really a good way to reduce your heavy metal burden.
Yeah, well, I've just confirming those temperatures, Jonesy, that you mentioned, that 80 to 120 degrees Celsius. There's this hormone, IGF-1 hormone, which is responsible for cellular growth and recovery. That there was a 1976 Finnish study, going back a while.
When did it finish?
But the effects of that hormone, the IGF-1 hormone, it showed a 142% increase in that hormone when subjects were exposed to that temperature range, 80 to
100. Okay, yeah, cool.
Yeah.
Wow.
80 to 120.
Wow.
Yeah, massive, 140%.
Yeah. So in your research and what you guys have seen, I wanted to ask you, Rooster, a question from our cold episode. You mentioned that, you go in the cold, you get real cold, you jump out, and then you let your body warm yourself up. When I do my cold, I get in the cold, then I go and have a warm shower, and sort of similar to the heat, once I'm out of the heat, I'll go and find the coldest shower I can and sit in that for a minute or two. You were saying there's benefits to allowing your body to either heat back up from the cold or cool down from the heat.
I think they're metabolism benefits.
Okay.
From what I've read and listened to, greater effects of your metabolism when you allow your body to readjust its temperature naturally.
Well, that makes sense, doesn't it?
And I guess there's benefits for both. There's benefits for both the cold and heat, alternate therapy. But then there's also the benefits that I sort of go by with the metabolism thing, with just letting your body.
It's interesting, isn't it?
Come back or warm itself up.
All of them seem to have great benefits. So if you do your hot-cold contrast, you're just doing your hot or you're just doing your cold.
Yeah.
And then you're allowing your body to.
Yeah.
And how many times you do it per week.
Yeah. I think you're going to find what's practical for you,
Yeah.
I don't have a sauna. I wouldn't fill up my bathtub to a hot temperature. Maybe I might do that. I don't know. Now that we've discussed it, I could possibly think about it, but I just find filling up a bathtub a waste of water. I'd probably just go down and once a week go to a sauna.
Well, interesting. Sorry to cut you off there. Interesting. Huberman was talking about growth hormone.
Mm-hmm.
So if you were doing some weights and you didn't want to sort of decrease your growth hormone and doing it sort of several times a week, because I think that's what you were saying.
Yeah.
Growth hormone goes down.
Yeah.
If you're only doing it once a week or once every 2 weeks, it increases your growth hormone.
Yeah, right.
So
well,
there you go. So if you, I guess, depending on the protocol or the benefits you want to get from it, is how you would set up your own protocol to do it. So if you're only going to do it once a week or twice a month or whatever it's going to be, maybe you're getting the growth hormone benefits.
Good idea.
Yeah. I think I think he mentioned that.
Yeah.
In that bit too.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's kind of interesting. All these different sort of protocols have different benefits for you.
Yeah.
Well, just speaking on exercise as well, I've heard definitely for your near-infrared saunas and maybe the others as well, I'm not sure, they talk about just increased mitochondrial function after you're doing regular exposure to near-infrared saunas. So from a, I guess, strength and cardio point of view and just a general wellness point of view, if you're increasing your mitochondrial density or anything like that, then that's going to have positive health effects. So
yeah. And those infrared heat therapies, like there's dudes putting them on their balls, for like increasing testosterone production. That's what that's for. Is that right? The infrared on the knackers.
Yeah. I think that might be more to do with the light spectrum in the near infrared.
Right. Okay.
I've never. Maybe it's all of it. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
I think we'll talk about that.
We might have to look at that a bit more.
Yeah, I did come across some interesting stuff sort of in that realm with the testosterone one we're going to talk about next week. So
Yeah,
we'll have a
okay.
chat about that. That might be
Yeah,
might
well,
be
with regards
a
to
giggle.
with regards to infrared.
Just with regards to
Sunning your plums.
yeah, sort of more natural ultraviolet
Okay.
sunlight, but that
Yeah.
does have, as we spoke about in our vitamin D episode, sunlight does have some near infrared in the spectrum depending on the time of day and stuff like
Yeah,
that.
because I remember listening to Ben Greenfield 5 years ago, and he was talking about him
Put something
sitting
on his
there
balls.
with
Yeah,
infrared
yeah.
on his nuts, you know. Like,
While he's doing his work at his desk.
yeah.
Yeah, good stuff.
Yeah. What when we first talked about looking at this heat therapy subject, I just was really interested in the whole concept of ice and heat for acute injury. That's one thing that sort of was the first thing I wanted to look at with heat, and so, like being an ex-footy player and that sort of thing, you were always told if you had an injury, ice pack on the hammy straight away for the first 24 hours.
Still do it.
Then you start your heat therapy. But listening to a few things as I was researching this topic, it seems to be that is a bit of a Western medicine type philosophy, whereas Eastern, like traditional Eastern medicines, like Chinese, Tibetan sort of philosophies, never ever have ever used ice on an injury, on an acute injury. So basically, when you get an acute injury, you've got two things happen. You've got an influx of toxins, waste products, dead cells, but you've also got an influx of fluid, macrophages, extra proteins, that sort of stuff for repair. So their philosophy or their belief is that, and you apply ice, you're
blunting that effect.
You congest all that you blunt it. And Smitty, it reminded me of a point you made in our inflammation podcast when you spoke that inflammation is perceived to be bad, but it's actually good. So by applying ice to an injury, we are reducing
acute inflammation.
Acute inflammation
from an injury is good.
Yes, acute inflammation.
Systemic inflammation, which we kind of talked about.
Of course, that was the point that we made, but Smitty made the acute inflammation is a necessary vital thing. So I just found it really interesting that we are probably preventing the movement of all these components in the inflammatory process. Therefore, by reducing the healing process. And I wonder whether that contributes to more scar tissue forming and that sort of thing. I mean, I've pulled hamstrings all the time playing footy, straight with the ice pack, you know, and then that just occurs 4 months.
If you think about it, your body is injured. What a great mechanism it is to recover and repair. So what that ice is doing is stopping that happening.
Yeah.
So even in the footy now, you watch people, they whack an ice pack on it, wrap it up, they sit there with their ice pack, and you're thinking, well, your body is amazing at fixing that. All you're doing is blunting that effect and just pushing it down the line.
Yeah.
I mean, these footy players, they get all the best treatment. So it's really funny that that's one of them that...
Yeah, it seems to still be a traditional type of practice. I mean, but these are elite professional sporting clubs doing this. So you'd think that they would know something that we don't.
I thought they would be moving away from that kind of thing, because I think now they're talking about compression, elevation, and movement.
Yes.
Allowing the movement, allowing the lymph to get out, return the waste products, like you were talking about, and the ice is not doing that.
No, it's even some heat and light massage of the injured area is contributing to that movement of in the lymphatic system kicking in and that sort of stuff. It's, it was really interesting, and I guess it's something worth probably getting a professional into discussion. Because,
it would be interesting to see someone who's sort of at the pointy end of that spectrum in the modern scientific community to see what... Because, you know, I listened to Kelly Starrett, who is the Ready State, used to be Mobility Wad. He was talking about that 5 or 6 years ago. He's written in books. Ready to Run is a really good book. How to Be a Supple Leopard was his other one. And he's talking about those things 5 or 10 years ago. And I read those, maybe not that long. But I've read those and thinking, okay, this will be mainstream in 2 or 3 years' time. And here we are 2 or 3 years' time later, and you're still seeing the same thing.
Yeah.
And I know the ice bath, the footy players aren't using it for soft tissue injuries. They're using it for CNS recovery and those kind of things. So they have those benefits. But a acute injury and icing, I'm not a doctor, so maybe I don't know. But
Interestingly
Yeah.
enough, if we compare it to the ancestral man, he wouldn't have had an ice pack in the fridge, would he?
No.
If
We
he's
just would have carried on,
if
kept
he's done an
moving.
injury, he probably wouldn't have even known what it was. He just
Yeah.
sore.
Well, the body wants to heat
Leg
it up,
sore.
doesn't it? Like when you get sore, your body swells it and it
The
gets
inflammation
warm
is
and
hot.
red.
Yeah.
So it's hot.
Yeah.
So you're
And-
sort of going against what your body wants to do.
Yes.
And pretty much that's all the ice is doing, really, is taking that pain the heat pain sensation away.
Yeah.
And removing the swelling and
Yeah.
I reckon there'd be really good arguments for and against.
Yeah.
I reckon you could easily find someone who was a diehard icer
Yep.
and someone who was a diehard don't ice.
Yeah.
Who would probably both be very qualified professionals.
And
I
that's
reckon
probably
there would
why
be-
we're still seeing it
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
Yeah.
in sporting fields.
Well, these dogmatic sort of medical procedures are really hard to kill them, aren't they? Like
Yeah.
once something is mainstream, it's
Yeah.
really hard for it to become unmainstream.
Yeah.
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 For sure. But I mean, there's a lot to be taken from Eastern medicine. I think a lot of the things they practice can leave Western medicine.
Yeah. So I guess we've discussed, the benefits of heat, protocols to run through, how long to go for, temperature ranges. Various different protocols have different benefits. Is there anything else we wanted to talk about before we wind it up?
I'll just jump in with one thing that's on my to-do list,
Oh yeah.
which is on my radar, which is very ancestral, and it's a sweat lodge. Have you guys
Oh,
across
yeah,
sweat
okay.
lodges? I recken Mickey Mac
No,
this would be
not
on
really,
your
but-
radar.
Yeah.
But there's sort of people in my broader network I know who have done the training in traditional, like running a sweat lodge.
Well, oh, okay. Yeah. Right.
And
yeah.
so essentially what it is you go out into the bush and you dig like a bit of a shallow trench, and then you get some supple tree branches and you fold them over,
Yeah.
and then you put all sorts of, well, I guess back in the day they would have used like leather hide or something like that, but these days you use like a natural leather or canvas sort of like tarp. Then you put some different layers over there, and then you get some special rocks. Usually they use basalt in my area. It's a sort of a bluey
Granity,
green,
yeah.
like a granity sort of a rock. It's good because it's a rock that doesn't like distort or explode in a fire. And you make yourself a campfire, and then you basically heat these basalt rocks up to a really high temperature. And then you have a special little tool, and you carry them inside the sweat lodge that you made. You're all sitting on the ground on the earth, and you put them in the middle, and then you tip water on them, and you create steam, and they get incredibly hot. But it's like a super natural, like
Wow,
ancestrally way to, well, I guess go and have a sweat. But there's a lot more to it than that. It's very ceremonial. Like it's a very like a prized job, I guess, to be like there's someone that tends the fire and tends the rocks, and there's someone on the inside doing that, and it's a whole sort of structured way. You learn how to go and do it. You learn how to build the structure, and I've always dreamt about one day maybe like doing one of those. That could be a really cool.
That would be awesome. People would
thing
love
to
that.
do, and you sort of,
Yeah.
I don't know, getting my hippie on, but you're sort of earthing on the ground, and you're in contact with Mother Nature, and you've got the flicker of the fire, and
But mate, that is
jump in the
so
stream.
ancestral because
So
in the movie
ancestral,
The
yeah.
Revenant, The Revenant
Yeah.
with Leonardo DiCaprio,
Yep.
when he gets attacked by the grizzly bear, all his wounds get infected, and he's nearly about to drop dead.
Yep.
He's befriended by a North American Indian who builds one of those little things for him,
yeah,
and then heats up these rocks, puts him inside it, and then puts on the rocks this medicinal plant that they must have had.
wow.
And then he's in there for days and days and days, and he's in there just constantly being smoked. And you can see the smoke coming out of this little shelter that this American Indian guy has built.
Yeah.
And then he comes out of it, and his wounds have become, well, they're not infected anymore, and he's on the way to healing.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was gonna ask, what would the ancestral man use that for? Ceremony, plant medicines,
Illness.
yeah.
Probably the whole
General
range of
health,
things. They were
yeah.
cleverer than we give them credit for.
Oh,
We
man,
are
yeah.
stupid cavemen and whatever, but I think when you look at the rich history of a lot of different cultures, they didn't do things for no reason because there's a lot of effort involved in things. So
Yeah,
they
yeah.
obviously did it for good reason.
Couldn't
But
just flick on the heater.
it's on my radar. I reckon one day, lads, we should try and do a little
Yeah.
sweat lodge
I'd
thing.
love
Get
to
some
do that.
courses
Yeah,
where you
little
can go and you
sanctuary
can
kind of
go
thing,
and do
yeah.
a little
Yeah, that
course
would
with
be
others and connect with like-minded
Yeah,
people
yeah.
and go and have a sweat.
Well, I wonder if any of the listeners would like to do that as well. Maybe it's something that we now have what I'm getting at is we now have a email address that people can contact us on, and if that's something that they're interested in, we'd like to hear about it, and maybe some topics that they want us to talk about.
Cool.
Yeah.
What's the email address?
modernancestralman@gmail.com. So MODERNANCESTRALMAN gmail.com. What an ancestral man.
Mm,
Yeah,
cool.
so get in touch with us. It'd
Yeah.
be good to hear from some listeners, what they think,
Yeah.
some topics that they want us to cover.
Yeah.
And
Especially
if they'd be interested in something like that,
Yeah.
maybe getting a group together and
we've got a few North American listeners. It'd be great to hear from them.
Yeah.
Get an email from one of them and see what topics are of interest over there.
Yeah.
Yeah,
A lot going on in the
you are.
States.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Huh?
Yeah.
A lot going on in the world,
Yeah.
man. Woo.
Yeah, thank you, Mr.
Don't get us
Hart.
started.
Well, that might be a good place to finish.
Yeah.
Is it, anyone want to close it out, or I think
Smitty normally closes us out with a wisdom statement.
Oh, wow.
Doesn't he? Like a Yoda, do or do not. You don't try.
I got nothing.
No, nothing.
I used it up on my sweat lodge thing.
Yeah, the sweat lodge is good.
I mean, if you want to connect with nature, do it in do a sweat lodge.
There
Doesn't
you
have to
go.
cost you anything. Saunas cost a bunch, but
Yeah.
go and make yourself a sweat lodge.
Yeah, back to the no cost. There you go.